Welcome one and all. This is the online learning platform at Department of Civil Engineering, BMS Institute of Technology and Management. I'm Dr. Rajesh Gopinath, and today, with respect to the course on Environmental Protection and Management, we shall be dealing with Basel Convention. Today's lesson will be covered in the following manner. As can be seen in slide 5, first I shall introduce you to the basic aspects, including its amendment. Then I shall give you a glimpse of the different kind of wastes that have been covered in this convention. Then we shall move on to understand its objectives, principles, conditions and the restrictions. Basel Convention, which is also popularly called as Trans-Boundary Movement of Hazardous Waste. We shall also understand the 4 steps or the procedures for the same. Moving on, we shall understand the challenges faced by this trans-boundary movement. Finally, we shall be summarizing this, and then I shall list the different references that I have reviewed towards drafting this presentation. Slide 6. So what exactly do you understand by the term hazardous waste? In simple words, if a material or a chemical has one among the following properties, such as toxicity, corrosiveness, explosiveness, flammability, reactivity, radioactivity, which means if a chemical is corrosive or toxic or explosive, that is it can explode, or flammable, that is it can catch fire, or reactive, that is it is a highly reactive species, can react with anything around it, or radioactive, that is it emits alpha, beta and gamma radiations. If a chemical has any one among these properties, then it is called as a hazardous waste. Yes, every country, every nation most probably does have something called as hazardous waste management rules, including India. If that is the case, why are we talking about a concept called as trans-boundary movement of hazardous waste? Why are we trying to understand the convention which was implemented on 22nd March 1989 at Basel? Let's try to go into the past. There is something called as the infamous Kian-C incident. What actually happened is, a ship had sailed which carried incinerator ash right from the city of Philadelphia in the United States to the city of Haiti. Now, just to provide you information about what an incinerator is, it's a technology which is used to manage solid waste, which means it's a technology which burns completely a waste matter which is provided and turns it into ash and gas. Now, this ash is yet a waste and it needs to be disposed in a proper manner. So basically what happened is, from the city of Philadelphia, a ship carried all the incinerator ash right up to Haiti. When it reached Haiti, it had disposed more than 50% of it onto the beach. However, this ship was forced away. When this incident came to light, the authorities forced the ship to return back. Eventually what happened is, this ship sailed to and forth, changing its name several times, unable to reach any port which was ready to accept this waste. Eventually it is postulated that this ship, that is the crew of this ship, literally dumped almost all of that ash into the Kian Sea. This is popularly called as the Kian Sea incident. Now, along with that, there is one more incident which took place in 1988. It is called as the Cocoa case. In this incident, there were about 5 ships which had set sail from Italy and was carrying about 8,000 barrels of hazardous waste. Now, what happened is this ship sailed from Italy to a town in Nigeria called as Cocoa, and all these 8,000 barrels were given to a Nigerian, okay, to safeguard them in his farmland for a monthly rent of $100. The idea is there is transportation of hazardous waste in an illegal, unorganized, unsafe manner to another location, wherein the recipient is even not aware of the impending dangers because of receiving or storing this hazardous waste. Due to these two incidents, that is your Kiansi incident and the Cocoa incident, okay, there was a important development which happened as an outcome of United Nations Environmental Program. On 22nd of March 1989, in a place called Basel in Switzerland, 53 signatories came together to sign a treaty, a multilateral agreement. This treaty was basically an international treaty which is popularly called as the Basel Convention. Basel Convention is hence an international treaty which was designed to reduce the movement of hazardous waste between countries and specifically to avoid, prevent transfer of hazardous waste from a developed nation to an underdeveloped country. However, I would like to reiterate that this convention, that is control of transboundary movement of hazardous waste, did not address the movement of radioactive waste. Now, signed on 22nd March 1989 as a United Nations treaty, okay, this actually was entered into force on 5th May 1992. As of 1999, there were 130 parties, but as of 2016, it is 184. What needs to be also understood is, initially when this agreement had been drafted, while most of the countries had ratified it, there were 2 which did not. Incidentally, they were United States and Haiti. So basically, what does this convention do? This convention had put forward a set of standards, a set of procedures with respect to the movement of hazardous waste, solid waste and incinerator ash between states, between countries. However, it had entered into lot of disagreements, lot of oppositions, lot of rejections and lot of issues, and most of these were raised by the least developed nations and environmental organizations. The argument was this convention cannot be successful since it has lot of loopholes and gaps. Actually, the original convention did not prohibit waste export to any location except for Antarctica, which means any country, developed, developing, underdeveloped, least developed, could accept hazardous waste from any other country. Hence, the main purpose was not being solved. Now, Basel Ban Amendment, which happened in 1995. The ideology behind this is, as you can observe from slide 7, it is not sufficient that you just put a set of rules to decide how the hazardous waste has to be transported or received. It also is important to understand whether a country which receives a hazardous waste is capable of even receiving it, treating it, storing it, disposing it. Slide 7 clearly indicates the nations which are party to Basel Convention and the Basel Ban Amendment. Lobbying at 1995 Basel Conference by the least developed countries, Greenpeace and several European countries such as Denmark, they led to the adoption of this amendment. This amendment was actually accepted by 86 countries. Okay. Now, what does this amendment do? It prohibits exporting of hazardous waste from a list of developed countries to a list of developing countries. In simple words, what the Basel Ban Amendment does is, it avoids or curbs or controls the exploitation by developed countries upon the underdeveloped nation. These developed countries have the potential to treat the waste. However, it would require sufficient amount of money and energy. So, this country which develops the waste disposes it to underdeveloped country for a lesser cost. This receiving underdeveloped country, for the sake of amount, receives it but is not capable of even storing it, treating it, disposing it, and this would eventually lead to environmental disasters. As I had told you in the cocoa case of Nigeria, or in the city of, the country of Haiti. Okay, that is your Kiansi incident. Let us move on to slide 8. Slide 8, on your left hand side, you see the basic properties which a hazardous waste would have: toxicity, corrosivity, ignitability, reactivity and ecotoxicity. Now, on the right hand side, these are the list of type of wastes which is covered in Basel Convention. Biomedical waste, wastes arising from mining operations, industrial waste, agricultural waste, end of life equipments, that is obsolete, discarded, for instance electronic waste. Okay. Now, this slide has been referred with respect to United Nations Environmental Program 2005. Let's move on to slide 9. So, what is the main purpose of the Basel Convention? The ulterior motive is very simple: to protect the human health and the natural environment from any impending threat when an individual, or inadvertently when there is any reaction or a consequence on account of hazardous waste being transported, disposed, received, recycled, treated in a manner which is not befitting it. Okay. Now, your Basel Convention has two main pillars. The first one, the movement of hazardous waste to be controlled and with a proper pro forma. The second one is, it is not merely transportation of waste from one sector to the other sector. It's also proper, safe management, a sustainable solution for the hazardous waste which has been created. Okay. Now, majorly, to achieve all this, there are three underlying principles. As much as possible, the hazardous waste must be treated and disposed very close to the location where it was generated. As much as possible, you need to ensure that the generation, the quantity of the hazardous waste has to be reduced to the best possible extent. And thirdly, also there must be measures to ensure how much ever possible there is reduction in the movement of these hazardous waste across geographical boundaries, and wherein it happens they have to be sustainably handled. So what are the primary conditions which needs to be met if you are undertaking a transboundary movement of hazardous waste? First and foremost, there must be two parties, which means there should be at least two states, two countries which are involved in the movement, and both of these nations, okay, have to ensure that they need to satisfy at least one among the three conditions which has been listed in slide 10. Let's look at slide 10. The first condition is the nation or the state which is exporting the hazardous waste is doing so only because they do not have the necessary facility, capacity to manage it in a sustainable manner. The second condition is the state or the country which is receiving it, they require this hazardous waste as a raw material for their operations in certain industries. Slide 11. Let us look at certain other additional conditions which the parties may be restricted to or must definitely be restricted to in the context of TBM. First one, either of these parties are entrusted with certain rights. Let's see what those rights are. The party who is receiving the waste, okay, they have full rights to prohibit the import of hazardous waste into the jurisdiction completely or partially. If in case the nation or the party does this, the other party who is exporting it needs to comply and respect this prohibition. The party which is exporting the waste, if it has reasons to believe that the importer is not having the sufficient facility to manage the hazardous waste in a sustainable manner, then the exporter, that is the first party, has full rights to stop the exportation from taking place. It is also mandatory that a transboundary movement should not occur with a non-party. As I said, there are a list of countries who are not supposed to export, and there are a list of countries who are not supposed to import. Finally, it is possible that a transboundary movement can happen through states which are not party to this convention but with prior consensus and documentation. Let us now move on to slide 12. What are the restrictions which are imposed, and why are they being imposed? Because as you can see the image on slide 12, there is several violations which are taking place in the movement, treatment and disposal of hazardous waste. So basically our entire world has several miniature ticking bombs waiting to explode. Now what are the restrictions? The first one, if a country does not have a proper recycling ability or disposal facility, they are not supposed to receive any waste, and the exporter should not even send it. Second, if a country has a facility to dispose and recycle, they themselves are supposed to manage the waste and they cannot export it. Thirdly, the country which is receiving the waste can do so if that waste is a raw material for them. Now let's move on to slide 13, wherein we shall discuss the procedure of how to carry out transboundary movement as per Basel-Ban Amendment. Let us start with notification, which is the first stage of the transboundary movement. In this stage, the objective is for the exporting nation to inform the importing nation about the proposed transboundary movement of the hazardous waste. Let's look at the parties involved. Generator, that is the industry who has manufactured the hazardous waste. Country of export, that is the authority who has the provision to process TBM. Country of import, that is the receiving nation wherein they have the ability, potential to receive, dispose, recycle, treat the hazardous waste. Okay. Now, disposer is that facility within the country of import who can handle the received hazardous waste. Apart from the generator, country of export, country of import and the disposer, the third party is the country of transit. That is, when the vehicle or the ship carrying the hazardous waste is moving from one geographical boundary to the other, may pass through certain other boundaries wherein that country may not be a receiver, but the party one has to pass through them if it has to reach the country of import. Now in this process, basically what is happening? Country of export must send a notification document to both the country of import and the country of transit. What does this notification contain? This notification contains details of hazardous waste. These details are actually sent by the generator to the country of export. So, the country of export takes the call whether to approve the movement. It also has the rights to refuse the exportation from taking place. So let's continue. After the generator has informed the country of export that there is so and so hazardous waste which needs to be disposed of via transportation to another nation. The country of export, based on the norms of Basel Convention, Basel-Ban Amendment, based on the policies, based on the legislations, will take a decision. Should we allow this or not? If they reject it, this information goes back to the generator, and generator has to take appropriate measures to handle the waste that they have generated, which will be monitored by the country of export. Now, if in case the country of exports approves, then the country of export will send this information which has been received from the generator, which has complete information about the quantity, quality, properties and characteristics of the hazardous waste. This document will be sent to country of import and the country of transit. Let's move on to slide 14, stage 2. The second stage deals with the consent and issuance of movement document. What happens here is, the objective of this stage is to ensure that the importing nation agrees to the proposed transboundary movement and that the appropriate document shall accompany the shipment or the carriage of hazardous waste. Once the notification document has been received, then the authority of the country of import should provide its written consent, that is with or without conditions or denial. In simple words, the country of export, when it had sent the notification document to the country of import, there are two things that the country of import can do. In either ways, the country of import has to communicate back to the country of export. The first form of communication can be denial or rejection for reasons, okay, that they are unable to receive it at this point of time. The second form of communication is wherein they approve that they can receive the waste from the country of export, okay. Simultaneously, once this has been approved, then the country of export also needs to look into the country of transit. The authority of any country of transit should acknowledge in a prompt manner the receipt of the notification, and they can or they may provide the written consent to the country of export with or without conditions, again within 60 days. At the same time, the country of transit also can give a notification with denial that they do not allow this movement to take place. What we need to understand is, within a period of 60 days, if the country of transit does not reply, it is taken as affirmative that there is no denial from the end. In continuation, if country of import has accepted that they can receive the waste, it is based on a probable acknowledgement from the disposer. That is, once the country of import receives the waste, who would be handling it? Okay. In the same manner, the country of transit also would have accepted this transportation to take place with the consensus that there is no threat to this country due to this movement. What we need to understand is, when the notification has come in terms of consent from both the country of import and the country of transit, then the country of export will be producing the movement document, and they will be giving authority for the vehicle or the ship to set sail or start the journey. This ship or the vehicle or cargo is supposed to carry all documents with them in multiple copies, okay, and this copy shall contain all information right from generator to information sent to country of export to information sent to country of import to information sent to country of transit to information received from country of import and country of transit. So if I look at this document, which is right now with the cargo, it shall contain details of what the waste is, what it contains, what are its types, what are the characteristics, which was furnished by generator. If I look at the document, I also have information which was produced by the country of export to the importing nation and transiting nation. This document will also contain what replies they have given with respect to their consent. Now let's move on to the next stage, stage 3, that is slide 15, wherein the actual transboundary movement is taking place. In this stage, what is important is, the waste which is being carried or transported needs to be done so in a safe and sound manner as per the Basel Convention, with respect to labeling, with respect to sealing, with respect to storage, with respect to information about how to handle it in the event of a disaster or an accident. Also, as per Basel Convention, it is mandatory that the movement shall always accompany all necessary documents. Hence I said multiple copies, because some countries tend to receive the original document while some tend to receive the duplicate or triplicate version. Now, this image in slide 15 clearly indicates how the movement takes place from the generator to country of export, from the country of export to the country of import via the country of transit, and then from the country of import it goes to the disposer. Now let us see what happens once the shipment or the containment of hazardous waste has reached the disposer. Let's move on to slide 16. The objective of the final stage, which is confirmation of disposal, is as simple as the disposer needs to inform or send a notification or a confirmation to the generator that they have received so and so quantity of hazardous waste which has so and so characteristics. This information must also be sent by the disposer to the country of export as well. If the country of export doesn't receive this information from the disposer, the country of export shall advise the country of import for appropriate action, and then the country of import shall follow up with the disposer for the necessary perusal. Eventually, it is most important that the disposer shall be giving details to all the parties involved, that how much quantity of waste was received and how they have been handled, how they have been recycled or reused or treated or disposed. The documentation process is most important here, and this copy has to be sent to all other parties involved. So finally, at the end, all the parties involved, that is generator, country of export, country of import, disposer, and may or may not country of transit, shall be having in possession a copy of all the documents which has been raised right from generator to the disposer and back. So my dear friends, this is the procedure of transboundary movement. Now, let us look at the challenges that the parties may face. Let's move on to slide 17. Now, the challenges what you may face are in 4 dimensions: the economical issues, the legal issues, the awareness issues, and the enforcement issues. In slide 17, as you can see, the economical issues are basically if there is no necessary facility or monetary power to handle or treat the hazardous waste. If the importing country doesn't have the necessary facility or the collection system, then it is a lacuna. At the same time, there could be a gap in the demand. As I said, sometimes the receiving country decides to accept a hazardous waste because it's a raw material for their industry. So if there is a dip in the market, and then this demand will decline. Okay. Now moving on to the legalities. There could be legal issues, there could be lack of clarity, transparency with respect to certain aspects such as, the way the hazardous waste has been defined or classified. Okay. There could be also gaps in the law itself. There could be gaps in the legislative system itself which may not cover adequately all the hazardous waste. Now, even if there is if there is a lack of coherence, lack of understanding, lack of competency between the authorities, between the ministries, between the agencies, it also can lead to delay. Okay? Now, different countries have different political systems. Different countries have different federal systems. This also can lead to issues in a smooth facilitation of TBM. Let's go to slide 18. The enforcement issues. There could be problems due to legal uncertainties. Okay, there could be no uniform level of enforcement at the state level or regional level or federal level. Okay, there could be a lack of capacity for border control. Also, probably there is a difficulty of risk profiling of the containers. Okay, now with respect to awareness, the lack of awareness among the public and politicians and the authorities and the systems and industries about Basel Convention and its amendment itself is the biggest drawback. When you do not know what is that which is being provided to you, what facilities are available to you, what you can do and what you cannot do. So this form of lack of awareness and knowledge is also a major drawback. Let's summarize this. So it's very clear that when you speak about disposal, it is not merely dumping. It is a combination of operations which results in sustainable end to a hazardous material, either through reclamation, reuse, recovery or recycle. Now, we also need to understand that since there are many parties involved, a meaningful management of hazardous waste cannot be done in isolation, and the entire concept of economy, society and health and legalities will picture. It is very important that we need to promote about waste management system across all the countries in this globe. It is not about simply the movement, it is about minimizing the waste which is generated. The advantage of transboundary movement is a sustainable solution in terms of pollution prevention and pollution control. And let me recap finally, what are the 4 stages? Notification, consent and issuance of movement document, the actual transboundary movement, and finally the confirmation of disposal. My dear friends, slide 20 tells you the different references that I have looked upon, and I welcome all of you to also go through this and enhance your knowledge beyond the scope of this presentation. So, as slide 21 says, in the next class we shall discuss about waste audit. So my dear friends, I once again thank you for your patient hearing. This is Rajesh Gopinath.